Hey, John.
Yeah. Hey, Eric.
I hey, I hear a little bit of a noise in the background, but I wonder if it's just me. Like almost sounds like waves or something. Like I have my ear to a conch shell. Um,
I can't hear it.
You have headphones in, right?
Yep.
Okay, Sean. If it sounds good on your end, we will. Then we're all good. Perfect, perfect. Everyone hear me? Okay. Okay. We'll wait one more minute, and then we'll get right into it. Okay. Perfect. John, welcome to Product on Live.
Thanks, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for being here. So there's so much I want to get into and so much to talk about. But first, I want to start a little, backing up. When you were in high school and college, what did you think you were going to do?
Well, I don't know. I went to high school in San Antonio, Texas, and I liked math and physics a lot. And I only applied to two colleges. I applied to Rice in Houston and Stanford. And I actually accepted Rice, and I was all set to go. And then I woke up one morning kind of freaked out because I'd never visited Stanford. And so I got on a plane that weekend and I came and visited Stanford and made my decision in about 30 seconds that it was the place for me. And then I came to Stanford and I figured I was going to do physics and major in physics. And I don't know, my grandfather was in the rocket program. So my grandfather worked with Werner von Braun in the 50s and 60s in like the American rock space program. And I figured I would do physics or something like that. And then I then I took my first physics class at Stanford, and I got it was not good. You know how they have those little histographs of like your test scores. Yeah, so people that I knew had their own little histograph on the good end of that, their own little bar on the good end. I had my own little bar on the bad end, and so it took me a little while to figure out to go back to what I really liked doing when I was a kid anyway, which was programming and computer science. So it took me not very long after I got to Stanford to figure out computer science is what I wanted to do, but it was a little traumatic.
And did you know after like at this point was this post Netscape? Was way post Netscape? Like, who were your
Oh no,
heroes?
I am super duper old, man. So like, I got there in 1989, so like 3 weeks before the earthquake. And in 1989, Stanford was one of the only colleges that had email, and so we had email and news groups and stuff like that. And I don't know. I'm not sure I had any heroes then. Like the internet was just not really there. Like it was in 1990. It was when I was a senior. It was the first time I saw the web. So it was in a demo, this class that had around human computer interaction is what we called it. And this guy from CERN, which was the lab in Switzerland where the web started, this guy came and demoed the web in this class. And he was brought in Next, which was where Steve Jobs was, one of these big black cubes, and was showing this thing. And it was this kind of thing for scientists. And I remember thinking, it's like, oh, text and pictures and links, click, click, click. And then I fell asleep. And, and that was in 1993. And then, that was the genesis of the web. But the Netscape wouldn't really come out until a year later and wouldn't really sort of be in the consciousness until 1995 or so, which is when I got my master's. So it's
And
pretty early.
you worked in Apple in 1997,
Yeah, I was in Apple when I was an intern. So in 1994, 1993, 94, and then I came back in 97.
and that's when Steve Jobs came back, right?
It is.
What do people not understand about that time, or just talk about Steve Jobs in general? What do people have misconceptions around, or don't really fully appreciate, or what can you?
Yeah. Uh, Apple was sort of profoundly fucked. It was. I can say that, right? I can say that on
Absolutely.
this is all good. It's the internet, right? So
Yeah.
not even TV. So, yeah. So Apple at the time was trading for. We were trading at about $2 or $3 billion market cap. So $2 or $3 billion. It's like 1/8 of a Snapchat, right? Or it's like half a Slack or whatever. So Apple Computer, right? And we had $2 billion in cash. And so we were trading right around zero. So, I think for all intents and purposes, we were like the same enterprise value as Yahoo. And because Yahoo's like valued about what their Alibaba stock is. But Apple, like one of the most fundamental companies in the world right now, maybe the most fundamental. And so it was just like this long period of losing. And this guy named Gil Amelio was CEO, and he bought Next. And Next came back in, and it was funny because nobody could figure out exactly why we had bought Next, but and then it didn't take very long for Steve to get in charge. And then the cafeteria started. The cafeteria was awesome for the time, but then we started losing meat stations. Like we had a meat carving station that turned into like a vegan station, and like we started losing all the meat in the cafeteria, and everything became vegan and very like earth friendly or whatever. So, but the kind of special part, I can remember. There were a couple of things that I really remember about that time at Apple. One was that we were leaking like a sieve. So all new product introductions leaked like crazy in a thing called Mac the Knife and some early websites. And I remember one time Steve, after he became the CEO, he sent out mail and said, okay, look, here's what we're going to announce next week. And he listed off like 5 things. And he's like, do not leak this. And then that was like a Thursday. And then like on Monday, we all came into work. I was a kid, like I was like 26, 25. And we all came into work, and there's an email from the CFO that said, look, last week, Steve said, look, here's what we're releasing. We had a leaking problem. He asked you not to leak it. We were watching everyone's email. 5 people leaked it. They've all been terminated. You're like, holy shit, like Apple's a completely different place now. And like that was a real tone setter. And then the other thing that was amazing about when Steve was there is he did these town halls to get people to care again, because I mean it's amazing, but like at the time just people didn't really believe in Apple and didn't really care. And so we had a town hall at Infinite Loop, which is where Apple's headquarters is now, in Building 4. And we go in, and Steve gets up and talks about it, and you get to the end, and it turns out the day before on the Dell earnings call, somebody asked Michael Dell, what should Apple do? And Dell said, well, they've got $2 billion in cash. They're valued at $2 billion. They should give the money back to shareholders and shut the company down. And it's an amazing thing, which is somebody with way more courage than I had in the Q&A part, after Steve had gotten finished with the talk, got up and said, hey, Steve, what do you think about what Michael Dell said yesterday? And there was this complete silence in the auditorium. And there's like a couple of beats. And then Steve said, fuck Michael Dell. And it's this amazing thing, right? And so he's like, look, if you guys believe what we're doing, if you guys don't believe what we're doing, then you should all get the hell out. And if you do believe what we're doing, then get on the bus and let's go.
Wow.
And it was just an amazing point and an amazing moment in leadership. And, I'll never forget it, really.
What does when you read the Steve Jobs book, the biography, from what you know, did it get it right? Did it miss something?
I didn't read it. I didn't read it. I didn't watch The Social Network. I've been misquoted so many times in so many press things that I don't read that stuff very much about people that I've been around.
But you were there for a year or so, and then you left to start your own company, right?
Yeah, so I left end of '97, and partly it's because I was in a place at Apple called ATG, which is the Advanced Technology Group, and at Apple, what happened in the '80s. Apple came with a bunch of computers, but they were all black and white, closed box Macs, and there was a group inside Apple led by a woman named Christina Woolsey Hooper, who's a super important person in computing, but she pioneered the Mac II, which was an open box that you could stick video cards in, and it was color, which Steve famously said you never needed. And so ATG came out with the Color Mac, and eventually would come out with QuickTime, which was sort of a predecessor to a lot of video like this in Flash. And but beyond that, Steve really never liked ATG. And so by the time we were a year, a lot of people that I cared about at Apple had left. And so I figured, I was going to start a company sooner or later. I had some people I really cared about that whose time had freed up, and so we bumped.
With Steve, or did you have the opportunity to build a relationship with him, or what was sort of the...
No, I was off in the corner, so I wasn't in the middle. My Yeah, not really.
Yeah. When you in a previous AMA, when someone asked, or I think I asked, what would you tell your 25-year-old self? You said you would find a tribe and build around that tribe. Did you find that at Apple, or talk about the people you met when you were,
Um,
at that?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, my tribe, I think my tribe probably started at Stanford because of this work that I did in undergraduate teaching it's a program called Section Leading at Stanford, or CS 198. And the people in that program were, after me mostly, before me, Astro Teller, who runs Google X, was a section leader who hired me. After that, Mike Schrepfer, CTO at Facebook, Adam Nash, the CEO of Wealthfront, Brett Taylor, CEO at Quip, Marissa Meyer, the list goes on and on and on. And these are all super talented, super thoughtful computer scientists who also wanted to teach at Stanford. And that was probably the first real coalescing of my tribe. And then went through Trilogy and went through Apple, and I collected people. I think the best thing you can do is find great people all along, and sort of make sure you treat them and pull them along as you all grow up together. And so one of my co-founders at Reactivity, which is my startup, was my mentor at Apple, who hired me as an intern in '94. Another of my co-founders was a guy who I'd worked with at Stanford and at Apple. And then my other co-founder was a guy that I worked with at Stanford and Trilogy. So in these relationships, they span a long, long time, and they're all really my best friends still.
When you so you ran Reactivity for
a while,
6 years, 7 years, and then sold it to Cisco.
Yeah, I started in 1998, or we did, and we started kind of as a consulting company, and we did a lot of work for a bunch of the .com boom companies, and then we took money we were profitable, and we were profoundly profitable immediately. And then we took money from Excel, from Mitch Kapor, who started Lotus, and then Peter Fenton, who's now at Benchmark. And we took money from them, and then we became profoundly unprofitable immediately because we started acting like we were funded. And then the crash happened. We hired another CEO, a guy named Glenn Osaka, who mentored me in some really good ways. And I became the CTO, and we did this pivot to become an enterprise software company, which was, a little boring then. I was like an infrastructure company. And then we sold it to Cisco in 2007. A while later, I left a couple years earlier and kind of was wandering around, and then joined Mozilla, though.
I know you were, I know Mitch, you sort of talked about Mitch Kapor. What have you learned from him?
Mitch is amazing. So Mitch Kapor, for people who don't know, was the founder of Lotus. Lotus came out in 1983 with Lotus 123, which is probably the fourth spreadsheet in the market. So this is an amazing thing. They did $53 million in first year sales of Lotus 123. $53 million for a package that was $499, right? And their plan was $1 million. This was 18 months after they launched, and they were a rocket ship immediately. And I learned a lot about Mitch, a lot about software from Mitch. I learned a lot about how you build productivity things, but I also just learned about how to be human. Like if you look at the work that the reason I did design in human computer interaction at Stanford is that I read an essay by Mitch called a software design manifesto, and he was the first person to start talking about software designers like building architects as people who designed things for humans. And that changed my whole life, reading that essay by Mitch. But you fast forward to now, Mitch and then his wife Frida Kapor Klein, they do so much around diversity and inclusion in tech. I just think they're giants, and I think they give back and they contribute in such good ways. I just learned about how to be a human and how to think more broadly than just products and technology.
In that, when you left Reactivity, was that a sort of rough moment for you? Was that, you just done your time there?
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
Yeah. So founding a company is a hard thing, as you know. Like it's super emotional and traumatic. You take everything personally, and everybody who says, I don't want to join you, or I don't want to work there, or I don't want to fund it, like you take it personally. And I remember, like, for the first 4 or 5 years, every challenge, I'm like, all right, let's gear up, let's go. And like, I put the company on my back, whatever, and I do whatever it took. And my co-founders did the same way. And it gave me energy to do that. And every time I did that, I'm like, fuck yeah, that's an amazing thing. Let's keep doing it. And then there was this time, maybe 5 or 6 years in, where I didn't feel like that. I remember saying, okay, here's the thing, here's a new challenge. Let's suit up. And I'm like, oh, I'm so fucking tired.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and so that was the trigger for me. And it took me probably a year to figure out that it meant that that I kind of timed out on it. And so it was the time to move on and time to go find something I did get excited about. And so I left after 7 years, and that was hard. You know, I think it tore a relationship with my co-founder for probably 2 years. It took us a long time to fix it again. My board member told me founders don't leave, and kind of read me the riot act, which I thought was kind of a condescending way. And so, you know, obviously I still remember it like, 15 years later. So I guess it hit the mark.
Yeah.
But it was hard. And I didn't know what I was going to do next. And, you know this, like as a founder, you kind of do whatever it takes. Like you do some technology stuff and the product stuff, you host podcasts, you know, whatever it is. Right. And so you're like, what the fuck am I good for? Like, I'm not sure what I'll do next. I'm not sure what I know how to do anymore. I'm not coding and I'm not designing. I'm not doing it. What do I do? And so then I took 6 months off and kind of kicked around. I thought I wanted to be a VC, and I thought I was going to do VC, and I underestimated how weird and quirky VCs are. And then Mozilla happened, and I happened to be connected with Mitchell from some work I was doing with Mitch Kapor, Mitchell Baker. She's the founder of Mozilla with Brendan Eich. And Firefox had just started taking off, and I started just hanging out.
Did you have your own sort of Steve Jobs in India moment? What did you do during those 6 months?
No, I didn't. All I did during those 6 months is well, for the first month, I tried to it was like work. I just started working my to-do list like I did at work. And I'm like, shit, I don't need to live like my to-do list somehow defined me. It's like kind of like it does now. But then I ran out of stuff. And so I read like a book a day. I went to the gym. I ran about 6 miles a day. I lost a ton of weight. It's just better. And then I mostly was stressed about why people weren't calling me back, why they weren't trying to get me to work with them. And funny thing, when you're not working, everybody else is, you just wonder, why aren't they paying more attention to you?
Yeah. When you think about sort of the arc of your career, what, between Apple and Reactivity and Mozilla and Greylock, what sort of ties it together?
Yeah, well, two things. Building great products that matter is a huge one. I just always love software. I really, really love great software. And I think software changes the things that we make and that we use and that we play with and how we interact, how we communicate. And, it's what drew me to things like Dropbox and Instagram, and I invested. The other thing, I want to give this talk sometime about, it's called like the upside of getting your ass kicked. And the reason I want to give this talk is because, like, every time that I've tried to do something interesting, I get my ass kicked the first time. And it was, I went to Stanford, I got my ass kicked in physics. I tried to be a section leader, they didn't want to hire me. I think I think when you're getting your ass kicked, it means you're putting yourself into the right, into places where there's a lot more smart people and a lot more experienced people in the room at the same time. And if that happens, they're going to beat the shit out of you all the time. And that happened when I got to Greylock too, because my partners were Reid Hoffman and Neil Bluestreet and David Z and Josh Ellman and James Slavitt. All these guys are fucking great. And so I think there's real virtue in putting yourself in situations where you get beat and beat and beat, because that's how you get better.
I'm going to Barry's boot camp after this, John. Get my ass kicked. So talk a little bit, let's skip forward for the Mozilla story. You've done Mozilla for a long time. Did you finally realize, okay, now it's time to be a VC? What did you think you were going to do after? Talk about.
Yeah, let's see. So so Mozilla in 2010 or 2009, what became clear is that the existential problem for Mozilla was trying to figure out how to be relevant on mobile, and it still is in a lot of ways, right? I think they're still struggling through that, and I have optimism, but I think it's a challenging problem. But I felt like I felt like that was going to be a 5 to 10 year journey for Mozilla, and I felt like I wasn't going to be there the whole time. And so I felt like they deserved a CEO who's going to be there the whole time. And so it felt like the time for me to move on. I've been CEO of Reactivity and CEO of Mozilla. So, and then Reactivity wasn't a success, but I was very proud of it. I'm still very proud of the work we did there, even though most people don't know about it. And I was really proud about Mozilla because we got to nearly 500 million users, which, still like only a handful of products have ever done. And so it felt like to me, like I'd gotten being CEO out of my system a little bit, and I was comfortable moving to investing. And I wanted to get back to startups. I wanted to get back to working with young people who were fired up and full of piss and vinegar and changing the world. And venture felt like the right thing to do for me. It took me a long time to find the right place. Like there were 2 or 3 that I got really. I mean, the thing about venture is the power laws. Just the returns are very, very weighted historically to the top few firms. And so I really just looked at the top 10. I cut them in half because there were half that I just wasn't really interested in talking to, and I started talking to a few more. And with Greylock, there were 2 firms that I really got close to. One was a micro VC that I still love, O'Reilly Alpha Tech. That's where Bryce Roberts is. He's an amazing guy doing indie VC. And then Greylock. And Greylock was always kind of natural for me because my relationship to Reed, which is a long, probably 15-year spanning relationship, because David and Anil and James and Nasheem were also product oriented. So I'm a nerd, even at Greylock. Even by Greylock standards, I'm kind of on the nerdy end of the scale. Computer science degree, master's, all that stuff. But product people speak to me a lot.
And when you think about, again, the arc of your career, what do you think is your core competence? Like, what are you best at?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a funny question. So I'm 45 now, and when you're 45, you're going through this weird middle-age thing where you're trying to figure out why you matter and what your place is in the world. I've always liked building organizations that are good at building products, and that's what I did at Mozilla, and that's what I did at Stanford, and that's what I did at Reactivity, and a lot of different things.
Year-old thing, because I'm doing the 25-year-old thing. Like it just, you still keep asking the same questions?
Well, I'm reading some books about midlife crisis now, and it's embarrassing to talk about, but like I can talk about it to other 40-year-old people, but young people, it's harder to. Your brain starts changing, and so the physically chemical changes, and so the thing I'm reading right now, it's kind of amazing. It talks about your problem-solving brain versus your default brain. I mean, your default brain is the thing that knows, the directions to get to your office, and so you walk to your office automatically, think about it, or whatever. And it talks about in your 20s how your thinking, problem-solving brain is always dominant, and then in your 70s, your default brain is always dominant, and in your mid-40s, it's like they're kind of fighting, and so you end up in the kitchen saying, why am I here? What am I trying to do? And so it's just a bunch of things that it's helping me a little bit to realize there are some chemical things that are happening too. Yeah. On the other hand, but I have a bunch of knowledge and a bunch of experiences and a bunch of stuff that help me figure things out as I go through too. So it's a fun thing. Thinking Fast and Slow, that somebody just put on, that's an amazing book that everyone should read by a guy named Daniel Kahneman. Yep.
You found Dropbox and Instagram fairly early at Greylock, or was that even before? Or?
Yeah, my first year at Greylock, I did Tumblr, Dropbox, a company called Citrus Lane, which we sold to Care.com, and then a company called ClearSlide, which is sales productivity. Instagram, I did 2 companies the next year, the A of Quip and Instagram, and yeah, it was pretty early in my career.
Did you sort of think, hey, I'm really good at this?
No. So, the thing is, VC, what the fuck do you know? You don't know anything. Instagram's a good example, where, we were investors there for 4 days. So we wired the money on Thursday, and then Kevin called me on Sunday to tell me they were getting bought by Facebook.
Oh, right. But you doubled your money, right? Or...
Yeah, it turned out to be a 4X, but because we held it for a little while because of the antitrust stuff. But that's a funny one because, you double $10 or $20 million at a place like Greylock, and that's a good outcome, but not an amazing outcome. If Instagram had stayed independent, that would have been a career-defining investment for me. And so the funny thing about investing is that the sample size is so small. And like in a career, you might get 10 or 15 or 20 significant investments. And sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. And sometimes you'll be like Instagram, you'll sell a little too early, or sometimes it'll be like Tumblr, where there was way more headroom than you just couldn't quite get.
Hey, John.
Always just thinking about what you can do better and thinking about what you're trying to do, and always trying to learn. And like I said, like getting your ass kicked a fair amount.
Let's Ooh, John, you dropped out.
I can see you.
Right back. Hey, John, just join us right back. It'll be good. Oh, let me unlock the seat for you. You're good. Hey, John, what? Let's go deep on investing. When you first started, what did you learn from Reed and the other partners? Like, talk about your evolution as an investor.
Yeah. So I think that a lot of times as an investor, so the first piece of advice from a couple of people, Mike Spicer at Sutter Hill is an amazing investor, and then Bryce as well, is they said, look, don't try to be a Neil or David or Reed. Come in. It's going to take you probably 4 or 5 years to figure out what your investing style is, and then it's going to take 4 or 5 years after that to figure out whether it works or not, because the time cycles are so long. And that's a hard thing to internalize. That's a long time. And one of the things that you do is you come in, especially with partners like Reed and David and Anil, is you look and say, well, they've been incredibly successful at how to be like them. And then realizes that you're never going to be good at trying to be them. And what you need to figure out is how to be you. And almost definitionally, that means you're going to be interested in and able to help and work with things that are different. And so you want to be different on good axes and same on other axes, and trying to figure out what to learn and how to work with them. That's the key. So, Greylock's an amazing organization. It's been around for 50 years now. And so there's so much to learn from. But at the same time, the landscape's changing fast. Technology always does. There's so many more startups that are getting started now. So the question is always like how to learn from the amazing heritage and history we have here, and the amazing partners that are around, and then how do you chart your own course?
Give advice to the John Lilly of 2011, or whenever you joined Greylock and started as an investor, what would you?
Well, I probably would have made sure to take the meeting with Travis. That didn't happen. I don't know. I think that I'm not sure exactly. What I try to do now is I try to listen as well as I can. I try to give feedback as well as I can, and I try to make sure that people understand that there's all sorts of different. And then, Josh and I see a lot of companies together, and we always try to give good feedback. But we always go out of our way to say, look, we're just trying to help get through the real issues. We're not going to cheerlead. Try to be helpful to you and work things through. And so I think the big change from operating is that when I was running Mozilla, I'd have thousands of interactions with each person every year. And so that you build these deeper and deeper relationships. And then as a VC, you have hundreds to thousands of interactions in a year, but they're all onesies and twosies. So a lot of times you'll have one meeting with a person in a year, or 2 meetings with a person in a year. And so it just becomes, it's hard to make sure that they understand really where you're coming from and what you mean, and that you really genuinely want to be helpful.
Do you ever look at something like Y Combinator or something at the seed stage and say, hey, that looks like a lot more fun? Or is that not the case?
I think so. I mean, I think Y Combinator those guys are very, very smart, and Sam and Paul and Justin, all those guys are doing amazing work. I think just by numbers, you have a bias towards saying yes to people. As a VC, I'll see probably 300 or 400 companies a year, and I'll invest in a significant way in maybe 3 of them, in a busy year, 4 or 5. And so what I would say is that institutional VCs have a bias towards saying no, which I think is a little soul crushing. And so I think that VCs are not fundamentally optimistic. It's a funny balance because
Right.
I am hyper optimistic about Quip and Figma and Jack Mobile, another company I'm involved in ways that I think are ridiculous and crazy, but I'm just so jazzed about the chance of these companies. But then I also say no to a ton of companies I shouldn't. And so there's a funny balance between saying no and being optimistic fundamentally.
A couple people, Naval is one, who will credit his success in investing to luck. Is he being modest, or people being like, they'll say that there are a few angels who say that they don't spend that much time looking at investments. They just sort of invest in their friends. What's your take on?
Oh, I don't know. Like horses uh, with people you think are amazing and awesome, and you want to help. It goes back to this thing we were talking about earlier about your tribe. And I think there's real strength in figuring out who you want to be lined up with and who you don't. And I don't know. I think there's a ton of great angels, and they're all different. There's a ton of great investors, and they're all different.
And I want to evaluate Figma as an investment because I think it's an interesting case study. Quip, obviously. Oh, can you hear me? Hold on one sec. John, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So Quip, you invested in, Brett Taylor, you've known for a long time, but Figma is from Dylan, who's what, 20, 21?
Hey, Eric, I lost you again.
You're
kind of in and out.
Hold on. John, whenever you're back, just join. I'll get you in. Good thinking, Sean. With Quip, the founder Brett Taylor, you've known for a long time. Let's evaluate Figma. Dylan is what, 20 years old, 22. Oh, okay. Well, you invested in him a few years ago, right? So what was it about him that caused you to invest in? What can people learn from that? You disagree about with him the most, and when? Yeah. John, you're cutting out for me a bit. Can you hear me? Okay. John, just rejoin when you get back. No sweat. Cool. Yeah, that's what I heard too. What's up, Lucy? Yeah, Eric, man, you ruined it for everybody, Eric. Blame Eric Willis. Hashtag. If anyone has any questions you want to hear, you know, put it on the right hand side. I actually did write a rap this morning. If you want to hear it, I mean, you know, I can do something about it. First, let me finish this podcast. I have a podcast editor, so it'll be fine. This will be edited out. Don't worry. Yeah, John's very good at what he does. Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, come in whenever. I'm great, man. How you doing? Sweet. While waiting for John, let me give a shout out to the Blab guys. Blab is a fantastic product. All of you should be on it, blabbing, interviewing people, debating, watching stuff. Blab is a great product, ciphering. Blab is great founder, great great team, great office. Oh, sorry, John, I need to try now, John.
Boom.
I don't know. Reed's one of my best friends. He is genuinely every meeting, every single one. He genuinely tries to help, no matter as long as he thinks that you're trying to move the ball forward in some way. He just always wants to help. He likes clever things. He likes clever solutions to problems. He wants the world to get better. He's just a good human being. He's really good at triaging, which means that he's got a list of things, and if you're in his top three things, he's going to pay crazy attention to you. If you are not in the top three things, forget it. So like when he was on my board at Mozilla, was the time when he was transitioning to Jeff Weiner, and I didn't put this together until later, but like I really needed him to weigh in on a board issue, and he was on the board, and he wouldn't respond to my mail for like a month, and I was like, where the fuck are you, Reed? And anyhow, but he was triaging. He was focused on LinkedIn issues, so he's really good at that, which is a skill that it's hard for me not to answer all my mail every day, but Reed is pretty good at letting it burn, and I wish I was better at that. Yeah, I think that focusing on it, like you prioritize for a reason. You prioritize because some things matter and some things don't. And Reed's really good at focusing on the things that matter. Yeah, the that's interesting. So I other guys I like in venture. Obviously, I work at a place with my partners that I really admire a lot. I think that David and Anil and Reed and James and Ashim have all had long careers where they've contributed greatly. I think broader industry wise, I think my North Stars are guys like Mitch Capel who really give back. Now Joey Ito is one of the fucking all-star of the world, the guy that runs Media Lab now. Jennifer Palka, who runs Code for America. Todd Park, another one of my heroes, who was the chief technology officer for President Obama for a number of years and relaunched healthcare. Obama, DJ, who's the chief of the country. I just think all these people genuinely are working to make the world better. Genuinely are trying to use technology and use their skills to contribute. Yep. Yeah, they're both awesome firms, and they've both been awesome for many years. And I think they've both, especially Benchmarks, had a very, very hot hand lately, especially with Snapchat and Uber, but really a bunch of them beyond that. I think Sequoia and Benchmark both have been amazing at finding A rounds and like really leaning in and really helping make those companies be better. So I just think both firms are good and deep in technology and at go-to-market. I don't know. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a smarter, more committed group of guys in those two firms. I would say they are groups of guys, which we were too until we hired Sarah Tavel last year. We need more diversity. Need more women investing. Can people hear me while I'm talking? So is it Eric? Is it Eric? It's the bandwidth problem, or is it me? I can't hear you. Answer. I think my main answer is that it's a good question to ask because we have a ton of people with a ton of money and a ton of leverage now, and so I think over the next 5 or 10 years, guys like people like Mozilla, Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla are going to figure out what they want to do with their wealth. I think we got to figure out how to use technology to get a bunch of leverage. Entrepreneurship is a starting point, but it's not the only thing. So we got to figure out how to be intentional about what we build. Oh, I hope so. I mean, we'd be pretty well served to have Jeff and Cheryl in government. In politics, I don't give a goddamn about, but like government's pretty important. And I think that if we had people running our government like Cheryl and Jeff, things would be a lot better. I mean, maybe President Trump will put them in his cabinet. Yeah. Well, so a couple things. So I'm on the board of Code for America too, where Jennifer Popp is the executive director, and Code for America focuses on state and local politics, which I think one of the things about the federal government is it's such a scale. It's just not very human scale. State and local is human scale. So like your cities, your states, that's real stuff that really matters. Although we don't focus on it as much as we focus on Trump and Cruz calling each other names. And so, but it really matters. And so I think that one of the things we got to sort out is how do we use technology to empower us more as citizens? Because like there's this, the analogy people use is like when you're when you're driving on 101 and you're complaining about the traffic, it's kind of bullshit to complain about the traffic because you are the traffic. So at some level, complaining about our government is kind of bullshit because it's ours. It's by the people, of the people, of the people, by the people, for the people, right? And so what we got to figure out is how to help technology reconnect us to how we govern ourselves. And we have to see ourselves in government again. So I think there's a lot of that. I think just the fact that that people like DJ and Megan and Todd and AMAC are in the White House running around trying to talk to people about what they're doing, trying to solicit input, get more people involved, get more technologists involved, get everybody involved. I think that's a pretty big win. And Code for America, we just try to get the city governments involved, and that's been helpful. We're just trying to help cities figure out how to use technology to connect. It's a little weird that I feel more connected to Uber than I do to my federal government. Pretty strange. Yeah, let's see. So, well, I have like a 3-year-old son and a 10-year-old son, and so those guys are pretty busy all the time. They keep me pretty busy. So I spend a lot of time, with soccer games on the weekends, and trying to help them become real productive humans. My 3-year-old pretty much plays. I taught him to play cards, solitaire over Christmas, and so we do that 4 hours a day now. But so that's a pretty big job. But like, having said that, right now I'm trying as hard as I can to be a good investor and a good board member and a good partner at Greylock for our LPs and for our GPs and for our portfolio companies. So I'll do that for a while, and I don't know how long. A while. I like it, and I feel like I'm learning. Every day is super broad and fascinating and fun and challenging and frustrating and hard, and all these great things, right? But eventually I'll do something else. And I think probably my wife's an educator. I think making sure that she can contribute as much as she can is a big part of what I need to figure out over the next 5 or 10 or 15 years and next year. And then eventually I got to figure out how to work on, I think, wealth inequality and income inequality. Because I think it's a bad problem that I think has bad effects. And so I'll think about that more too. But right now, I'm really just trying to be good at Greylock and good with our portfolio and a good dad at the same time. Yeah, everybody points back to that post that PG wrote in January. And the truth is, like, startups, like Silicon Valley, just doesn't. It's not a very big effect on the inequality spectrum. I think that the bigger thing is, like, we got to figure out how to help people be in the middle class. Like, the middle class in America was huge in the 20th century. It seems to be diminishing in the 21st century, and it was. So how do you help people feel like they have paths from being lower middle class to upper middle class? How do you give them tools, not just to be Uber or Lyft drivers all day, every day, but to see some mobility and some learning? I think that's the key. Great. I like Stanford football coach much better than he does. We both agree that Stanford needed a new basketball coach, and he won't admit it like 2 months from now, but he thinks Trump was a terrible, terrible candidate for president too. 2 months from now, he's going to talk about how great Trump is for America. I swear to God. Oh, I don't talk to Mark very much. I don't know. He's a smart enough guy. I'm probably slightly less like Ayn Rand oriented. Oh, all the time. We argue all the time. He's right a lot. I'm right sometimes too, but he wasn't sure that we should invest in Instagram. Turned out all right. Yeah, I was going to try to take a little bit of a break from Twitter for the next couple of weeks because it's making me sad, actually. But what can you do? I think I think there's some real value in learning how to directly engage with. Oh my God, I've brought out Trump people in the sidebar now. This happens all the time. I tweet about some obviously insane thing that Trump says, and then everybody starts responding to you about how it's obviously correct. Shit. That's why I need to leave Twitter for a little while. Maybe I'll Snapchat it for a while. Yeah, super awesome. Very needed. It's overrated and awesome, and it'll be underrated like in like 8 months. Yeah, it's like it's too hyped now, and then what's going to happen is like the number of units that get shipped, the number of minutes get spent in VR this year is going to be disappointing to everyone. Everyone's going to think, "Oh, VR is dead, didn't work." But then it's gonna sneak up on people again because it's amazing. Both. So again, like it's gonna be the same answer for all of them. So like everybody thinks like, holy shit, they solved AlphaGo. Now Skynet's gonna come kill all the humans, right? So that sounds bad. And it sounds but like we can't, like Siri still doesn't understand like how to stick something on my calendar. So I think we're a little far away from AI being perfect. On the other hand, like self-driving cars are gonna save a ton of lives soon. But like we're probably a decade away from like real natural language. You know, chatbots we're going to get released, and people are going to say, wow, these are awesome, but they can't really do anything. And then there's going to be some things that really understand conversation. That's going to be awesome. So I think that right now we think that convolutional neural networks are the savior to all problems, and that's just not true. But there'll be interesting systems that solve lots of problems. Oh yeah, I think trustless permission is a huge deal. Bitcoin, I don't know what to make of. I think it'll be around for a long time. I think the fundamental technical breakthrough there is huge. But we got to figure. The problem is like nobody can really articulate why mainstream people have to use it. Like, what's the killer app? And if you can't find the killer app, if you can't find your Netscape, then it's not very useful. He's underrated in every way. Like you'll never find a smarter, more thoughtful guy. I was so proud of MIT. Like my wife went to MIT, and I give her a hard time. I tease her about the fact that they're nerds there. But not like Stanford, where we're all super well adjusted. But I was just so proud of MIT to take a risk on this guy who doesn't have a college degree and was a DJ growing up. What an amazing hire, and he's done well. Tim's great and very smart, and he has such a nose for things that matter. And his government 2.0 stuff, like it's transformative, huge. No, I mean Figma's great. Everybody should get on the Figma wait list. I've got some things around AI and Surge coming in a few weeks. You should all try Quip. It's way better than Google Docs. Like you have no idea, like until you try it with your team. But and everybody should spend more time on Product Hunt. You guys have done a really great job and with a really great life and character, and well done. Peace. Bye.